What's good, guys? It's Ilson 4K, and you know why you're here, and I know why you're here. Because you've seen it, and I've definitely seen it way too many times for somebody who only saw it not too long ago, as I'll talk about later on in this review. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. That's right, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is one of the long list of 80s horror movies in the next decade that is turning 40 this year, released on October 22nd, 1982, 40 years old. Of course, we all know Halloween 3, whether or not you have seen this movie, as the Halloween that features no Michael Myers outside of a brief glimpse of him on TV, featuring Halloween 1 and 2, the movies, not him as a character being mentioned briefly. So this series really tried to take something and do different with the Halloween series, and unfortunately, as we'll learn in this review, it tried to do it during a time when the horror genre was shifting into the more slasher era, and this movie with its sorcery and witchcraft and unique plot had no real place in the era at all, outside of the somewhat amounts of gore. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this movie was a great horror movie, even though it didn't start to get popular until about the last 5 years or so. Yes, for more than 25 years or 35 years, people really just did not like this movie because it did not have Michael Myers in it. And then in the last 5 years, everything changed. Merchandise for this is coming out up the wazoo, and it's only coming out harder, with this year being the 40th anniversary. I got this last year from Tapes from the Crypt myself. I also have the other jerseys you'll see me wearing during this video. And this movie finally is getting the recognition it deserves. And I'll be quite honest with you, this is in my top 5 horror movies of all time. And also a lot better than most of the other Halloween movies that came out after it, which is ironic because everyone hated on this movie for the longest time. So join me as we take a look at this movie right now on its 40th anniversary and see how it all went down, see how it was received, and see how it's been going ever since with the popular resurgence. It's Ilson 4K, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Okay, Halloween 3. Let's talk about the one thing we all know about this movie, and we've all known about this movie for the last 30 or 40 years, depending on how long you've been into it. The first and only movie to not have Michael Myers in the Halloween series, of course. The plan was actually to turn this into an anthology series with different stories for each release. Fans wanted Michael Myers back so bad, they actually put him in part 4, which is rather ironic because Halloween 3, despite being hated when it came out, and I mean the movie was so disliked at its release for the lack of Myers, and a $2.5 million budget, it barely grossed $1.4 million at the box office. That's a $1.1 million loss. What's ironic is nobody really liked this movie. I actually saw this movie in 2020, and I couldn't believe how good this movie was. So, could you really imagine that for a whole second? Think about that. An anthology series named Halloween, the new story that comes out every year on Halloween. I mean, that's incredible. That's something that would have been so cool to see, and as much as I hate to say it to the Michael Myers fan, would have really done Halloween a favor, without a doubt. Halloween would have had a little bit of a more longevity run without Michael Myers for a while, I feel like they could have brought him back in, and it would have just been crazy, because I mean, the series name was Halloween, and if every story that came out in this supposed planned anthology series took place on Halloween, I would have been even more for this idea than I could already tell you, because who doesn't love a horror movie that takes place on Halloween? I mean, I could cover all of those movies in one special by itself maybe one year, but this year I had to cover this because again it turns 40. But I think it would have done Michael Myers a lot of favors and Halloween fans a lot of favors, especially with the idea of things crossing over and maybe even Michael Myers having crossed over into another story. You never know what could have happened, even if he couldn't have existed in this Halloween 3 world, simply because there was a movie based on him. So again, I think that would have been really cool to see, and it's just a shame that nobody in Hollywood has come along and taken the idea of releasing a series that releases a Halloween movie every year on Halloween. I gotta be quite honest with you, in terms of its execution, this movie really has no peers in its shooting style and execution for the time. And it's been said that if this wasn't a Halloween, it might have been an easily forgotten movie at the time amidst all the heavy horror icons at the time, such as Freddy, Jason, and Pinhead, and especially if Halloween 3 was to be its own release and did have Michael Myers. And while I do see that being possible, this movie has stood the test of time in its own unique way, and I kind of got to explain the story a little bit for those that don't know it. Some of you make sense, so here we go. It starts off with this individual running away as he's being pursued by a car chasing him. Your classic horror movie trope. And then he gets snuck up on, presumably by a guy who was tied to the same guy chasing him in this car. He then kills one of them and manages to escape as it starts raining, making the whole situation even more shit. He runs to a gas station, with the gas station owner being in the place watching a Silver Shamrock commercial, the facetious company owned by the main villain that will learn more about the diabolical plot scene. So yes, I guess I can't go any further in the review without stopping to talk about this infamous commercial from the facetious company Silver Shamrock that sells the masks, which of course are the three most cliche of the 60s and 70s Halloween costumes you could have, which were a witch, a skull, and of course the pumpkin, which is my favorite, as you can tell by everything out there. Witch, pumpkin, and skull, which was really cool because the masks actually look pretty damn cool even by today's standards. But we're not here to just talk about the masks and their purpose, we're here to talk about the jingle. For those of you that don't know, which isn't many I'm sure, it's actually London Bridge is Falling Down, which is just reworked to be a commercial to sell kids Halloween masks, which really is something that they would do in this day and age, let alone back in the 60s and 70s, right? So it's totally believable. Again, this whole jingle is ironic because in addition to this movie bombing, you would have figured that the one most iconic thing from the first two Halloween movies, beyond Micheal Myers, is of course, what? The music, the main theme of Halloween. The fact that this movie has iconic theme music in its own way without actually having a theme song, because really, there is no theme song, it's just a reoccurring theme in the movie, which sounds strange, but it's not the same thing, as it's not played in the intro and it's not played in the outro, so therefore it's not a theme song in my opinion. But it's just fantastically well done, and it makes everything about this movie's resurgence and popularity in items and merchandise even better, because the big giveaway at 9 and all that stuff and reselling it, it just makes the merch moving so much easier for everybody, and it's so cool to see it off to the side. And I just had to take this little moment off to the side, speaking of sides, to talk to you about why this song is just so ironic and iconic all at once, along with how cool these goddamn masks were. Don't lie, you want them. Main character in the next screen, the good guy, so to speak. We find out his kids are ungrateful little shits as they rub their Silver Shamrock masks on the dad's face for trying to give them some lame-ass 70s style thin plastic mask that he was trying to pass off as a cool gift. He's then paged into his job as a doctor, where he treats the very guy who was running away into the hospital as he's dropped off by the same gas station attendant. This guy then sees the Silver Shamrock commercial start playing and freaks out, and the doctor orders him to be sedated as he clearly seems manic. We see one of the individuals who was chasing this now injured guy in the hospital show up outside as the nurse and doctor leave his room, and the mysterious man comes in and murders him. After that mysterious man goes back to his car and pours gasoline on himself, he commits suicide by lighting a match. That was some hardcore fatality shit back before Mortal Kombat was even a thing. I mean, goddamn. The movie takes off from there, with the doctor and this dead guy's daughter trying to figure out the situation as what happened, as the daughter showed up to the hospital trying to figure out what happened to her father. It leads him to the small town that hosts the Silver Shamrock factory in it, and it's the place that makes these masks you see the kids wearing, and in all of the commercials on the TVs. The doctor is a total pimp, by the way. He gets all the ladies with his 70s porn stash. I mean, he just runs through every female that he can. It's ridiculous. Good for you, man. Good for you. Work that 7-year degree. So here's where I say the movie has no peers in how it's executed. This part of the plot is actually pretty nuts. You know, I'm sure there's 1,000,001 movies involved in mass genocide plot using sorcery or witchcraft that can be named, but this one is its own little piece of work, and it's a good bit ahead of the time before others. The idea being that each mask this place sells has a little piece of an ancient stone hedge inside of it, placed inside the Silver Shamrock logo on the back of it, and on Halloween night at 9 p.m., all the kids are going to be told to tune into a special channel for a big giveaway. This is the trick, as the kids will watch a certain TV spot with their masks on that somehow affects the kids by killing them and making snakes, spiders, and roaches fall out of the kids' faces, as shown in a film when they tested on a family who comes to the factory to try and order more masks for their store. It is a sight to behold, especially in 1982 when the visual effects were just all practical and no CGI. I mean, right down to the whole thing of the snake biting the guy. It's unbelievable. I mean, that's a real goddamn rattlesnake. I'm a snake freak, and I can tell you that's the real deal. The doctor and daughter eventually put it all together after meeting the factory owner in a climactic end battle scene that doesn't ever really give us closure, as the main villain is in fact defeated by his own magic stone, but the commercial that will kill the kid ultimately ends up playing on the TV at the end. And despite the doctor's successful attempt at getting one of the TV stations to playing the special to stop, it still plays on another, and we can only assume as the doctor screams into the phone for them to stop playing it, that all the kids have succumbed and every family is dying from rattlesnake bites. It's supposed to actually have happened that the credit was supposed to have the sounds of kids screaming to make this more effective, but it turns out they thought that was a little too grotesque and pulled it at the end. I've never actually seen a version of it that exists with this in it, but apparently that was the original plan. That's the plot breakdown pretty much. It seems a little crazy and convoluted, but if you've actually seen this movie, which I'm assuming most of you have, you understand it's a fairly simple to follow plot that's actually pretty well done and unique on how it's executed and handled. Really, for the time, this was not the plot that was really popular, as I've said a million times before, with horror movie fans and audiences overall, given the slasher vibes, but this was still a really good horror movie. Great storytelling, really didn't have a lot of peers at the time, was a very unique take on how to handle a horror movie, and especially this horror franchise, if you want my honest opinion of it. You know, speaking of sights, the effects in this movie are halfway between well done and campy. Heads exploding, people being crushed between two cars, a guy lighting himself on fire, and that scene with the mask where the bugs and snakes all come out of the kid's head are all still very cool to watch to this day. The movie didn't have a lot of gore that was over the top, but it's still a little brutal, especially a kid dying in front of his family. There's another one where the guy's head gets crushed, I believe. The woman's face that gets melted off from messing with part of the mask that has the power to kill her was some shit to see as well. In the 1980s, it was really, everybody fighting to try something new and be as practical and dope as possible after, the whole 70s practical effects were really starting to show the, what's the word I'm looking for, base level of what we can do, and things went and got bigger as the budgets got bigger and the studios got more impressed. So again, for what they had to handle in this movie at the time with the low budget, I was impressed. I really got to say how much I am a huge fan of this movie in all its entirety. It's the perfect blend of everything to me, and it really holds a special place in my heart for being a movie that takes place on Halloween, like to the rest of the movies in the Halloween series. I once heard someone say that after the smoke cleared and the dust settled and people really started watching Halloween 3, it became painfully obvious that while the fans were happy to see Michael return in Halloween 4, Halloween 4, 5, and 6 were much worse than Halloween 3 for people who said Halloween 3 was terrible based off the simplistic fact that Michael Myers was just not in it. Alright, that about wraps up my review of Halloween 3 on its 40th anniversary. It's really great to see this movie getting the recognition it deserves so many years later, because as I've stated over and over again, it was just a movie that was released towards the end of an era and the beginning of a new one, and it had a Halloween 3 title on it, and everyone wanted to see Michael Myers. So it's really great to see, myself being one of them included, a lot of people just checking this movie out recently and getting into it, and longtime fans of it saying, "I told you so." I definitely am happy to see that, because this movie, in my opinion, is truly one of the great what-ifs in horror movie history, in a good and bad way. And I mean that in the sense that I would have really liked to have seen what would have happened if Halloween did in fact go on to become an anthology series and have its own movies every year with something new and different. How cool would that have been to have that happen with the Halloween series? Maybe there wouldn't have been 40 movies between now and then, but I thought that would have been really unique and a really great way to keep Halloween fresh, keep the Michael Myers character fresh when they ran out of ideas for him in Halloween 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, some of the Rob Zombie. You get what I'm saying. Michael Myers needed a break, and this movie could have done something that was really unique. And as I stated in this review already, I'm really surprised someone hasn't come along from Hollywood and taken the idea of having an anthology series that releases a new miniature movie, be it 90 minutes or whatever, every year, come out and be something we could go watch, because the fan base is there. We all know someone would do it. It obviously can't be called Halloween. Maybe it could be called All Hallows Eve. I don't know. But the fact that someone slept on that and missed the opportunity is a little sad, but there's still plenty of time for that to happen. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope it was a good time for you. It was a lot of fun filming and making this. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you catch me on twitch.tv/illsun4k, 9 p.m. on twitch.tv/illsun4k, just in case you didn't get it the first time. Again, we do a lot of video game streaming, mostly AAA titles, have a lot of fun, do some horror talk here and there. Again, guys, thanks for watching. It's illsun4k.